The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal towers of the Galactic Defense Academy. The massive space station orbited the pale moon of Kepler 442c, its gleaming halls filled with students from across the known galaxy. Ships arrived daily, bringing young minds from dozens of worlds to learn the arts of war, diplomacy, and science. Jake Morrison walked through the wide corridors, his backpack slung over one shoulder. At 22, he was taller than most of the alien students around him, but his calm brown eyes and easy smile made him seem harmless enough. He wore the standard academy uniform, a dark blue jumpsuit, with silver trim, but somehow it looked different on his human frame than it did on his classmates. The corridors buzzed with conversation in 100 different languages. Translators built into the walls converted most speech into the common tongue. But Jake had learned to pick out individual voices. The musical trills of the Xanthari mixed with the grinding tones of the Korvaxi and the quick chittering of the Thektar hive minds. Jake turned a corner and nearly bumped into Veltar, his Xanthari classmate. The alien's silver skin shimmered as he moved, and his large black eyes reflected Jake's image like dark mirrors. Most Xanthari could read surface thoughts, which made conversations interesting. "Good morning, Veltar," Jake said, adjusting his backpack strap. The Xanthari tilted his head, studying Jake's face. "Your mind is quiet today, human Jake. Most students think loudly before Dr. Zethak's class." Jake shrugged. "Just looking forward to learning about void creatures. Should be interesting." Veltar's skin darkened slightly, a sign of confusion among his people. "You find interest in creatures that devour ships and crews? Your species is strange." They walked together toward the classroom, passing groups of students clustered around floating displays that showed news from across the galaxy. Jake caught fragments of conversations about trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and the ongoing expansion of various species into unclaimed sectors. The classroom for advanced xenobiology was larger than most, with curved walls that could display three-dimensional images of any creature in the galactic database. Rows of seats were arranged in a semicircle, each one adjusted to fit the anatomy of different species. Jake's human seat was relatively simple compared to the complex support structures needed for some of his classmates. He took his usual spot in the back row, pulling out his tablet and stylus. Around him, other students settled in with their own note-taking devices. Crix, a young Korvaxi, sat nearby. Her rocky exterior was a mottled brown today, which Jake had learned meant she was in a good mood. "Morrison," she called out, her voice carrying the grinding undertones common to her silicon-based species. "Did you complete the reading on void predators?" "Most of it," Jake replied. The section on hunting patterns was fascinating. They seemed to use fear as both a weapon and a food source. Crix's rocky surface shifted to a darker shade. "You read about creatures that hunt in the deep void and call them fascinating. Your species processes threat information differently than ours." Before Jake could respond, the classroom lights dimmed and Dr. Zethak entered. The Korvaxi professor was old even by his species standards, his rocky hide scarred from centuries of field research. His movements were deliberate and heavy, each step making a soft grinding sound against the floor. Dr. Zethak's eyes, glowing amber orbs set deep in his craggy face, swept across the classroom and lingered on the three humans present. Jake felt the weight of that stare but simply nodded politely in return. "Today we continue our study of apex predators," Dr. Zethak announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced real dangers in the dark spaces between stars. "We will examine creatures so dangerous that even veteran soldiers refuse to engage them without overwhelming firepower." The walls around them came alive with images of various monsters. Creatures with too many teeth, beings of pure energy that could drain a ship's power in seconds, and things that defied description floated in the air around the students. Many of the alien students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jake leaned forward, studying each image with genuine interest. He made quick notes about size comparisons, apparent hunting strategies, and environmental adaptations. When an image appeared of something that looked like a cross between a spider and a shadow, he raised his hand. "Professor Zethak, this creature appears to exist partially outside normal space. How does it maintain coherence across dimensional boundaries?" The professor's amber eyes fixed on Jake with obvious irritation. "Mr. Morrison, this is the Void Crawler, a creature so terrifying that its very presence can drive sentient beings to madness. Perhaps your concern should be survival rather than academic curiosity. But understanding how it hunts would help with survival strategies, wouldn't it? Jake asked, genuinely puzzled by the professor's tone. Several alien students made sounds that Jake's translator couldn't interpret, but their body language suggested surprise or fear. Dr. Zethak's rocky surface darkened to an angry red-brown. The void crawler is not a puzzle to be solved, human. It is death incarnate. It feeds on fear, grows stronger from terror, and has been responsible for the destruction of entire colonies. Your species has been spacefaring for barely 50 years. Perhaps you should show proper respect for creatures that have haunted the void since before your homeworld developed multicellular life. Jake felt his cheeks warm slightly, but he kept his voice level. I meant no disrespect, Professor. I just think understanding predator behavior patterns could help develop better defense strategies. Defense strategies, Dr. Zethak repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. Mr. Morrison, the void crawler has destroyed ships crewed by warriors with centuries of combat experience. Veterans of the Galactic Defense Force refuse to enter systems where these creatures have been detected. What makes you think a young mammal from a backwater planet could contribute anything meaningful to our understanding of such beings? The classroom fell silent. Even the normally chattering Thektar hive minds went quiet. Jake felt the attention of every student in the room, but he kept his expression calm and curious rather than defensive. I suppose I don't know what I could contribute, Jake said quietly. But isn't that why we're here? To learn? Dr. Zethak stared at him for a long moment, then turned back to his display. Very well, Mr. Morrison. Since you seem so confident in your species' ability to face the unknown, perhaps a practical demonstration is in order. The professor's amber eyes gleamed with something that Jake couldn't quite identify, but Veltar's silver skin suddenly went pale as moonlight. Professor, Veltar said carefully, surely you don't mean— I mean exactly what I said, Dr. Zethak replied. Class dismissed for today. Tomorrow we will visit Sublevel 7 for a field study of live specimens. I suggest you all prepare accordingly. As students filed out of the classroom, Jake packed his tablet and notes. He noticed that several of his classmates were giving him strange looks, some worried, others almost pitying. Veltar approached his desk as he finished packing. Jake Morrison, the Zenthari said quietly, I believe you may have made an error in judgment today. Jake looked up at his friend's concerned expression. What do you mean? Dr. Zethak is not known for his patience with students who question his authority. And Sublevel 7, Veltar's skin shimmered with anxiety. That is where they keep the most dangerous specimens in the academy. Live specimens. Jake shouldered his backpack and headed toward the door. Well, I guess tomorrow will be educational then. As he left the classroom, Jake missed the way Dr. Zethak watched him go, the professor's amber eyes glowing with anticipation and something that might have been malice. The next morning arrived with an unusual tension in the air. Jake noticed it as soon as he entered the academy's main corridor. Students from various species clustered together in tight groups, their voices hushed and worried. The normal buzz of conversation had been replaced by anxious whispers and nervous glances. Jake made his way to the rendezvous point. Dr. Zethak had specified, a security checkpoint near the restricted levels of the academy. Maria Santos and Alex Chen, the other two humans in the class, were already waiting when he arrived. Maria looked concerned, her dark eyes darting around at their alien classmates, while Alex seemed more curious than worried. Did you guys notice how weird everyone's acting this morning? Maria asked as Jake approached. Yeah, Alex replied, adjusting his glasses. Veltar wouldn't even look at me when I tried to say hello, and that Thektar cluster that usually sits near us just buzzed something that made my translator give an error message. Jake looked around at their classmates. The normally social Zenthari students stood apart from everyone else, their silver skin dimmed to an almost gray shade. The Korvaxi students had clustered together, their rocky exteriors turned to dark protective colors. Even the confident Thektar seemed subdued, their usual rapid chittering reduced to occasional nervous clicks. Dr. Zethak emerged from the security checkpoint, his massive form casting long shadows in the corridor lighting. His amber eyes swept over the assembled students, lingering on the three humans with what Jake could only describe as satisfaction. Follow me, the professor announced. We are going to Sublevel 7 for today's practical lesson. The elevator that took them down was larger than the normal lifts, designed to transport dangerous specimens and the heavy equipment needed to contain them. As they descended, Jake noticed that several of his classmates seemed to be having difficulty breathing normally. Veltar's silver skin had developed a fine tremor, while Crix's rocky surface had darkened to almost black. "Professor," one of the Thektar students spoke up, their translator rendering the hive mind's collective voice, "is this expedition entirely necessary for our education? Perhaps recorded observations would suffice for understanding void predator behavior." Dr. Zethak's eyes glowed brighter in the dim elevator lighting. "Recorded observations cannot convey the true nature of these creatures. To understand the apex predators of the void, one must experience their presence directly." The elevator continued its descent, passing level after level of the Academy's research facilities. Sublevel 7 was deep in the station's core, surrounded by multiple layers of shielding and security systems. When the doors finally opened, they revealed a corridor lined with containment cells, each one marked with warning symbols in dozens of languages. The air itself felt different down here, heavier somehow, charged with an energy that made Jake's hair stand on end. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow, and the walls hummed with the power of the containment systems. "Welcome to the Deep Archives," Dr. Zethak announced as he led them down the corridor. "Here we house specimens too dangerous for standard research levels. Each cell contains enough destructive potential to level a city block, held in check by forces that could power a small planet." They passed cells containing various horrors. In one, something that looked like liquid starlight pressed against the transparent barriers, leaving burning handprints that faded slowly. Another held a creature that seemed to be made of crystallized screams, its form shifting between dimensions in ways that hurt to look at directly. Jake found himself genuinely fascinated by the variety of life forms, even the dangerous ones. He made mental notes about their containment requirements and apparent behavioral patterns. When he pulled out his tablet to jot down observations, several of his classmates stared at him in disbelief. "Here," Dr. Zethak announced, stopping before a cell that seemed to contain only darkness. "We house our prize specimen, a void crawler, captured at great cost from the deep spaces between star systems." The containment cell was larger than the others, with multiple layers of transparent barriers and warning systems that blinked constantly. Force field generators hummed at frequencies that Jake could feel in his bones. Emergency teleportation pads were positioned around the viewing area, ready to evacuate observers in case of containment failure. "This particular specimen," Dr. Zethak continued, "has been conditioned through years of careful training. It responds to specific commands and can be safely released under controlled conditions for educational purposes." Jake peered into the darkness of the cell, trying to make out the creature within. At first he saw nothing but shifting shadows. Then gradually, he began to notice that the shadows moved in ways that didn't match the lighting in the room. "The void crawler exists partially in our dimension and partially in subspace," the professor explained. "It feeds on the terror of sentient beings, growing stronger and more solid as it consumes fear. Its hunting strategy involves inducing paralyzing terror in its prey before beginning the feeding process." As if responding to the professor's words, something stirred in the depths of the containment cell. The darkness began to take shape, forming what might have been legs or tentacles or something else entirely. Red points of light appeared scattered throughout its mass. Eyes, Jake realized, dozens of them, all turning to focus on the students gathered outside its prison. Several alien students immediately stepped back from the viewing barrier. The Zenthari's telepathic abilities seemed to be picking up something from the creature that terrified them, while the Korvaxi students' protective coloration darkened to the deep brown of extreme stress. Jake remained at the barrier, studying the creature's form as it shifted and writhed in the containment field. The void crawler seemed to be testing the boundaries of its prison, probing for weaknesses with appendages that phased in and out of normal space. "Magnificent," Jake murmured, making notes on his tablet. "The way it maintains coherence across dimensional boundaries suggests incredible control over quantum field interactions." Dr. Zethak's amber eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Mr. Morrison, since you seem so eager to study this creature, perhaps you would benefit from a closer examination." The professor moved to a control console beside the containment cell. His rocky fingers danced across holographic controls, bringing up displays showing the creature's vital signs and containment status. "What are you doing?" Maria asked, her voice tight with worry. Providing an educational opportunity, Dr. Zethak replied. The containment field can be configured to allow limited interaction with the specimen. A small controlled breach that will permit the void crawler access to this observation area, while maintaining overall security. Veltar's silver skin had gone completely pale. Professor, that seems extremely dangerous. Even a controlled release will be perfectly safe, Dr. Zethak interrupted. The creature has been trained to respond to specific commands. It will not cause actual harm, but its presence will provide invaluable insight into the true nature of void predators. Jake looked up from his tablet. Will we be able to observe its feeding behavior patterns? I'm curious about how it processes different types of neural activity. The professor's satisfaction was obvious in the way his amber eyes brightened. Oh yes, Mr. Morrison. You will have ample opportunity to observe its feeding patterns. I believe this will be a most educational experience for all of you. Dr. Zethak's fingers moved across the controls, and warning lights began flashing throughout the observation area. An automated voice began announcing, "Containment protocol changes in the common tongue and several alien languages, please. Ensure your personal shield generators are active," the professor announced to the class. "And remember, the emergency teleportation pads are available if anyone feels overwhelmed by the experience." As the containment field began to reconfigure, the darkness in the cell seemed to press forward, eager for release. The void crawler's many eyes focused on the students with hungry anticipation, and Jake found himself wondering what it would be like to interact with a predator that existed partially outside normal space-time. The first barrier flickered and died, and the creature began to flow toward them like living shadow given form and purpose. The containment barrier dissolved with a sound like breaking glass mixed with distant thunder. The void crawler flowed through the opening like smoke given terrible purpose, its form expanding as it tasted freedom for the first time in months. The creature's shadow substance writhed and twisted, growing more solid and defined with each passing second. Jake watched with genuine fascination as the being's form shifted between dimensions. One moment it appeared as a massive spider-like entity with too many legs. The next as flowing darkness punctuated by dozens of glowing red eyes. He could see how it maintained coherence across multiple dimensional states, and he quickly made notes about the quantum field fluctuations surrounding its body. The reaction from his alien classmates was immediate and extreme. The Xanthari students had gone completely pale, their silver skin now resembling tarnished metal. Several of them pressed themselves against the far wall of the observation area, as far from the creature as possible. The telepathic nature of their species meant they could sense the void crawler's alien thoughts directly, and whatever they found there terrified them beyond rational response. The Korvaxi students had activated their natural defense mechanisms, their rocky exteriors darkening to deep black and taking on the texture of armor plating. They clustered together in a tight formation, presenting a united front against the perceived threat. Even Crix, normally confident and curious, had retreated to the emergency safe zones built into the walls. The Thektar hive minds were perhaps the most affected. Their usual coordinated chittering had devolved into panicked buzzing, and several individuals within the cluster appeared to be having difficulty maintaining connection with the group consciousness. The creature's presence seemed to interfere with their telepathic links, isolating them in ways that their species found deeply disturbing. Throughout the observation area, personal shield generators hummed to life as students activated their protective equipment. Emergency lights bathed everything in a pulsing red glow, while automated warnings continued to announce the containment breach in multiple languages. The void crawler fed on all of this terror, growing more substantial and menacing with each wave of fear it absorbed. Its form became more defined, settling into something resembling a massive predatory creature with elements of spider, shadow, and pure nightmare. The red points of light that served as its eyes brightened and multiplied, scanning the assembled students with obvious hunger. Jake remained in his original position near the containment barrier, his tablet balanced on one knee as he continued taking notes. The creature's behavior patterns were fascinating. He could see how it used the fear of its prey to fuel its own existence, growing stronger and more physically present as it fed on terror. "Alex, are you getting this recorded?" Jake asked his human classmate, not taking his eyes off the void crawler. Alex Chen had indeed pulled out a small recording device and was documenting the creature's morphological changes as it fed. The dimensional phase variance is incredible, he replied, adjusting the device's settings. Look how it becomes more solid as it absorbs fear energy from the other students. Maria Santos remained near her two friends, though she kept glancing toward the emergency teleportation pads. Shouldn't we be more concerned about our safety? She asked. That thing looks pretty dangerous. Jake shrugged without looking away from the void crawler. Dr. Zethak said it was trained and wouldn't actually hurt anyone. Besides, when are we ever going to get another chance to observe apex predator feeding behavior in a controlled environment? The creature had been slowly moving through the observation area, savoring the terror emanating from various groups of students. It seemed to take particular pleasure in the fear of the Zenthari, whose telepathic nature made their emotions especially rich and flavorful. But as it continued its feeding tour, it began to notice something unusual. 3 of the beings in the room weren't producing the expected emotional responses. The void crawler's alien intelligence had evolved to recognize and categorize the fear signatures of dozens of species across the galaxy. It knew how prey should react to its presence, the specific biochemical changes, the electromagnetic patterns of terrified neural activity, the delicious taste of existential dread. But these 3 strange mammals weren't afraid in the right way. Their neural activity showed alertness and caution, but not the deep, primal terror that the creature craved. Instead, their brain patterns resembled something the void crawler had never encountered before, the focused attention of predators studying potential prey. Curious despite itself, the creature began to approach the 3 humans. Its form shifted and flowed as it moved, testing different configurations to see if any would trigger the proper fear response. Sometimes it appeared as a traditional spider creature, other times as pure nightmare shadow, occasionally as something that existed mostly in peripheral vision and couldn't be looked at directly. Jake looked up from his tablet as the void crawler approached. Interesting, he murmured. It's trying different forms to see which one produces the strongest fear response. That suggests a level of tactical intelligence beyond simple predator instincts. The creature paused in its approach, its dozens of eyes focusing on Jake's face. For a moment, predator and human regarded each other across the vast gulf of evolutionary development that separated them. Jake met the creature's gaze with calm curiosity, showing neither fear nor aggression. "Hello there," Jake said quietly, the same tone he might use when meeting a neighbor's dog. "You're quite impressive, aren't you?" The void crawler's form rippled with confusion. In millions of years of existence, no prey animal had ever greeted it politely. The creature's feeding mechanism was specifically adapted to process terror, not casual friendliness. For the first time in its existence, the apex predator found itself uncertain about how to proceed. Dr. Zethak watched from his position at the control console, his amber eyes glowing with anticipation. He had expected the humans to flee in terror by now, or at least activate their emergency teleportation systems. Instead, they seemed to be conducting a scientific study of his prize specimen. "Mr. Morrison," the professor called out, his voice carrying a note of irritation. "Perhaps you should consider moving to a safe zone. The creature is quite dangerous when it begins active feeding." Jake glanced over at the professor, then back at the void crawler. "It doesn't seem to want to feed on us, Professor. Look at its posture. It's displaying more curiosity than aggression. I think it's confused by our lack of proper fear responses." The creature had indeed adopted a more defensive posture, its form becoming denser and more compact. Instead of the flowing, confident movements it had displayed while feeding on the other students' terror, it now seemed hesitant and uncertain. Alex lowered his recording device. "Jake's right. Its electromagnetic field has changed completely. The aggressive feeding patterns have stopped and it's exhibiting what looks like confusion or even anxiety." Maria noticed something else. "It's backing away from us. A creature that feeds on fear is actually retreating from 3 college students. That doesn't seem right." The void crawler continued its retreat, moving slowly but steadily away from the 3 humans. Its many eyes remained fixed on them. But the expression, if such a thing could be said to have expressions, had changed from hunger to something approaching wariness. Other students in the observation area began to notice the change as well. The creature that had terrorized them moments before was now behaving like a nervous animal, backing away from something it couldn't understand. The Zenthari students' telepathic abilities picked up the creature's growing uncertainty, and several of them began to emerge from their hiding places to get a better view of what was happening. Jake stood up from his position, closing his tablet and taking a small step toward the retreating creature. The void crawler immediately responded by backing away further, its form becoming more solid and vulnerable as it lost access to the fear energy that powered its dimensional shifting abilities. Fascinating, Jake said, making a mental note to write a detailed report about this behavior later. I think we might be seeing something completely unprecedented here. He was right, though he had no way of knowing just how unprecedented it truly was. The void crawler had never experienced anything like this in its millions of years of existence. Every instinct it possessed, every evolutionary adaptation that had made it the apex predator of the deep void, was failing to function properly. These strange mammals didn't emit the electromagnetic patterns of fear that it had evolved to recognize and consume. Instead, their neural activity suggested something impossible: the focused attention of hunters evaluating prey. Jake took another small step forward, his movements slow and non-threatening. The creature immediately responded by backing away further, its shadowy form compressing as it lost access to the fear energy that normally sustained its dimensional abilities. The dozens of red eyes scattered throughout its mass tracked Jake's every movement with what could only be described as nervous attention. "It's okay," Jake said softly, using the same gentle tone he might employ with a frightened animal. "Nobody's going to hurt you." The words, translated by the universal systems into electromagnetic patterns the creature could understand, only increased its confusion. Prey animals didn't offer reassurance to predators. Prey animals ran or fought or froze in terror. They didn't speak calmly to creatures that could devour their souls. Alex continued recording, his equipment picking up the dramatic changes in the void crawler's bioelectric field. "The dimensional phase variance has almost completely stabilized," he reported to his friends. "It's operating almost entirely in normal space now." Dr. Zathak's scanner readings confirmed what Alex was observing, but the professor refused to believe what the data was telling him. According to every sensor in the observation area, the galaxy's most feared predator was exhibiting classic submissive behaviors toward a human undergraduate student. The creature's aggression levels had dropped to zero, its dimensional shifting abilities were severely limited, and its bioelectric field showed patterns that could only be interpreted as anxiety. The other students in the observation area had begun to emerge from their hiding places, drawn by the unprecedented sight of a void crawler in retreat. The Zenthari students, their telepathic abilities recovering as the creature's mental influence weakened, whispered among themselves in their musical language. The Korvaxi students had relaxed their defensive postures, their rocky skin returning to normal colors as they sensed the change in the situation. Even the Thektar hive minds had regained their coordination, their collective consciousness buzzing with excitement as they processed this completely unexpected turn of events. Their shared thoughts raced through possibilities and implications, none of which fit with their understanding of how the universe was supposed to work. Jake crouched down to get a better look at the creature, which had continued backing away until it reached the area near his desk. The void crawler's form was now more solid than it had been at any point since its release, its shadow substance taking on an almost physical appearance. The red eyes that dotted its mass blinked in what appeared to be a nervous pattern. "You're scared, aren't you?" Jake asked quietly, his voice carrying genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry about that. We didn't mean to frighten you." The creature's response was unlike anything recorded in galactic xenobiological literature. The apex predator that had terrorized spacefaring civilizations for eons slowly, carefully, folded its form into a more compact shape and settled beneath Jake's desk. Its many eyes continued to watch the humans, but the aggressive hunger that had characterized its earlier behavior was completely gone. Jake made soft clicking sounds with his tongue, the same noise he might use to calm a nervous cat back on Earth. The void crawler's eyes focused on his face, and several of its shadowy appendages twitched in what might have been a response to the gentle sounds. Maria stared in disbelief. "It's hiding under your desk, Jake. A creature that exists partially outside normal space-time is hiding under a student desk because it's afraid of you." "Not afraid of me specifically," Jake corrected, settling into a cross-legged position on the floor near his desk. "Afraid of something about humans in general. The question is what?" Alex lowered his recording device, his analytical mind racing through possibilities. "Maybe it's our neural patterns. We process threat information differently than other species. Most prey animals experience fear as an overwhelming emotional response, but Humans tend to analyze threats intellectually first. That could be it, Jake agreed, reaching slowly into his backpack. The void crawler tensed as he moved but relaxed slightly when he pulled out nothing more threatening than his lunch rations. We don't trigger its feeding mechanisms because we don't produce the right kind of fear response. Dr. Zethek abandoned his control console and approached the group of humans, his heavy footsteps echoing in the now quiet observation area. His amber eyes glowed with a mixture of disbelief and growing concern as he took in the scene before him. "This is impossible," the professor stated flatly. "Void crawlers are apex predators. They do not exhibit submissive behaviors. They certainly do not hide from prey species." Jake looked up at the towering Korvaxi. "Maybe we're not prey species, Professor. At least not to something like this." "Ridiculous," Dr. Zethak growled. "Humans are soft-bodied mammals with no natural weapons, no armor, no specialized predator adaptations. You are textbook prey animals. Are we, though?" Alex asked, his scientific curiosity overriding any concern about challenging the professor. Earth produced a lot of predators, but humans survived by becoming persistence hunters. We didn't kill prey with claws or fangs. We just followed them until they collapsed from exhaustion. Jake unwrapped one of his ration bars and broke off a small piece. Moving very slowly, he held it out toward the space beneath his desk where the void crawler had taken shelter. The creature's eyes focused on the offering, and after a moment of hesitation, a small tendril of shadow substance emerged to accept the food. The observation area fell completely silent as students and professor alike watched the impossible scene unfold. The galaxy's most feared predator was accepting food offerings from a human student, displaying behaviors that defied every known law of interspecies interaction. "It's not just that we don't fear them properly," Jake said quietly, continuing to offer small pieces of his ration bar to the creature. "I think they recognize something in us that we don't even recognize in ourselves." Veltar's silver skin shimmered as he approached cautiously, his telepathic abilities picking up fragments of the void crawler's alien thoughts. "Jake Morrison," he said carefully, "the creature's mind is unlike anything I have encountered. But there is one pattern I can identify: recognition. It recognizes something about your species." "Recognizes what?" Maria asked. The Zenthari's large black eyes reflected the emergency lighting as he struggled to interpret alien thoughts through his telepathic connection. "Predator," he said finally. "Not prey. Not competitor. Something else entirely. Something that makes other predators submit." Jake offered another piece of his ration bar to the void crawler, which accepted it with what appeared to be grateful delicacy. Around them, the observation area buzzed with quiet conversation as students from dozens of species tried to process what they were witnessing. Dr. Zethak's worldview, built on centuries of academic study and field research, crumbled as he watched his prized specimen, the creature he had intended to use to humble the arrogant humans, cower beneath a student's desk like a frightened pet. His scanner readings confirmed what his eyes refused to accept. The most dangerous predator in known space had submitted to a 22-year-old college student from Colorado. The professor's amber eyes dimmed as he realized the implications of what was happening. If void crawlers, creatures that existed partially outside normal spacetime, recognized humans as superior predators, what did that mean for the balance of power among galactic civilizations? As Jake continued to offer food to the hiding creature, making gentle sounds of encouragement, Dr. Zethak began to understand that everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was about to change forever. The emergency alert system activated throughout Sub-Level 7 as automated sensors detected the extended containment breach. Red lights flashed in urgent patterns while warning klaxons echoed through the corridors. Security teams were already mobilizing, expecting to find casualties and traumatized students in need of immediate medical attention. Instead, the first responders who burst through the observation area's emergency doors found themselves facing a scene that challenged every assumption they had about dangerous xenobiological specimens. The legendary void crawler, a creature that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years, was huddled beneath a human student's desk like a frightened animal, accepting small pieces of food from the young man's hand. Commander Harris, the lead security officer, was a veteran of the Galactic Defense Force who had seen action in dozens of systems across known space. His cybernetic eye scanned the area for threats while his organic eye tried to process what appeared to be happening. After a moment of stunned silence, he activated his communicator. Control, this is Harris. We have a situation in sublevel 7. No casualties, no apparent injuries, but I need Dr. Rodriguez down here immediately. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived within minutes, her rapid footsteps echoing in the corridor as she hurried toward the observation area. As the Academy's human xenopsychology professor, she had been expecting this call for weeks. The integration of humans into galactic academic society was bound to produce unexpected interactions, but she hadn't anticipated anything quite this dramatic. She entered the observation area to find Jake still sitting cross-legged on the floor, offering food to the void crawler while speaking to it in gentle, encouraging tones. The creature had emerged slightly from beneath the desk, enough that its shadowy form was clearly visible to everyone present. Its dozens of red eyes tracked Dr. Rodriguez's movements as she approached, but it showed no sign of the aggressive behavior that had characterized its initial release. "Jake," Dr. Rodriguez said carefully, "can you tell me exactly what happened here?" Jake looked up from feeding the creature, his expression showing more excitement than concern. "It's fascinating, Dr. Rodriguez. The void crawler's feeding mechanism is specifically adapted to process terror responses from prey species, but humans don't produce the right kind of fear patterns. When it couldn't feed on us properly, it started exhibiting defensive behaviors instead of predatory ones." Dr. Rodriguez nodded slowly, her mind racing through the implications. She had studied human evolutionary psychology extensively, and she understood what her colleagues from other species often missed about humanity's development. Earth had been an unusually competitive world, producing a species that survived not through specialization, but through adaptability and persistence. "Dr. Zethak," she called to the Korvaxi professor, who stood frozen beside his control console. "What were you hoping to accomplish with this demonstration?" The professor's amber eyes dimmed with shame and growing realization. "I intended to teach the humans proper respect for the dangers they would face in galactic society. I thought witnessing true terror would humble their overconfidence. Instead, you discovered something that will reshape our understanding of interspecies psychology," Dr. Rodriguez replied. She pulled out an advanced scanner and began taking readings of the void crawler's bioelectric field. "Commander Harris, I need this area sealed for extended observation. What we're witnessing here has never been recorded in galactic history." The commander nodded and began issuing orders to his security team. Emergency barriers were deployed to create a controlled research environment, while specialized recording equipment was brought in to document every aspect of the unprecedented interaction. As the activity continued around them, Jake offered another piece of his ration bar to the void crawler. The creature accepted it with what appeared to be growing confidence, even extending a tentative tendril to touch Jake's hand. The contact was gentle, almost curious, completely unlike the aggressive behavior recorded in every previous encounter with these creatures. Alex continued his recordings, his equipment capturing the dramatic changes in the creature's dimensional phase variance and electromagnetic patterns. "Dr. Rodriguez, the creature's entire physiology has altered since it started interacting with Jake. It's operating almost entirely in normal space now, and its bioelectric field shows patterns I've never seen in any apex predator." Maria watched the proceedings with a mixture of wonder and concern. What does this mean for humans in galactic society? If creatures like this recognize us as some kind of superior predators, how will other species react when they find out? Dr. Rodriguez paused in her scanning to consider the question. That's the crucial issue, isn't it? Humanity has been treated as the newcomer species, friendly, harmless, technologically naive. But if void crawlers submit to human presence, it suggests that our evolutionary psychology is fundamentally different from what other species expected. Veltar approached cautiously, his silver skin still pale from the earlier telepathic contact with the creature. "Dr. Rodriguez, I was able to sense fragments of the void crawler's thoughts during its initial release." The creature was not just confused by the human's lack of fear. It was recognizing something about their neural patterns that triggered its own survival instincts. "Survival instincts?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "You mean it was afraid?" "More than afraid," Veltar replied. It recognized a predator type that it had no evolutionary defenses against, something that could hunt it successfully. Dr. Zethak finally abandoned his control console and approached the group, gathered around Jake and the void crawler. His academic pride warred with his growing understanding of what the demonstration had revealed. Dr. Rodriguez, he said heavily, I have studied apex predators for over 2 centuries. I have cataloged their behaviors, analyzed their hunting strategies, and classified their threat levels. Never in all that time have I seen a void crawler exhibit submissive behaviors toward any sentient species. Jake looked up from his interaction with the creature. Maybe that's because you never introduced one to a persistence hunter before. Professor, explain, Dr. Zethek requested, his scientific curiosity overriding his wounded pride. Alex adjusted his glasses and consulted his recordings. Persistence hunting is a strategy that relies on outlasting prey rather than overpowering it. Humans evolved on a world where they survived by being relentless rather than specialized. We don't give up, we don't get discouraged by failure, and we keep coming until we achieve our objectives. But more importantly, Dr. Rodriguez added, we process threats analytically rather than emotionally. When faced with danger, humans evaluate, plan, and adapt. We don't trigger the fear responses that most predators rely on to identify prey species. Jake offered the last piece of his ration bar to the void crawler, which accepted it with what might have been gratitude. The creature had emerged almost completely from beneath the desk, its form more solid and defined than it had been since its initial release. I think, Jake said quietly, that creatures like this recognize us as something they've never encountered before. A species that doesn't fit into the predator-prey categories that govern most of the galaxy. We're not prey because we don't fear them properly, but we're not competing predators either, because we hunt in ways they can't understand or defend against. Commander Harris finished setting up the observation barriers and approached Dr. Rodriguez. Doctor, I need to file a report on this incident. How exactly do I explain to Galactic Defense Command that a void crawler was successfully pacified by a human undergraduate offering it lunch rations? Dr. Rodriguez smiled grimly. You tell them the truth, Commander. That humanity's role in galactic society is about to change dramatically, and that every species in known space is going to have to reconsider what they think they know about human nature. As if to emphasize her point, Jake stood up and gently coaxed the void crawler out from beneath his desk. The creature followed him willingly, its shadowy form moving with the hesitant trust of an animal that had found an unexpected protector. Come on, Jake said to the creature, using the same tone he might employ with a lost dog. Let's get you back to your containment area. You'll be more comfortable there. The observation area fell silent as the galaxy's most feared predator followed a human student across the room like an obedient pet. Dr. Zethek watched in stunned disbelief as his carefully planned demonstration turned into a revelation that would reshape interspecies relations throughout the galaxy. As Jake guided the void crawler back toward its containment cell, the creature moving with obvious reluctance to leave his presence, Dr. Rodriguez made notes for her upcoming report to the Galactic Academic Council. The document would be classified at the highest levels, but its contents would eventually filter through the corridors of power across dozens of worlds. The report would note that no injuries had occurred during the routine xenobiology demonstration, but the real message would be far more significant. Humanity, the species that had seemed so friendly and harmless when they first joined galactic society, might be the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever encountered, precisely because they didn't look or act like predators at all. The void crawler settled reluctantly back into its containment cell, pressing against the